Welcome to episode 267 of Real Health Radio. You can find the show notes and the links talked about as part of this episode at 7, so the word all spelled out, SEVEN health.com/267. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Real Health Radio. I'm your host, Chris Sandel. I'm a nutritionist and a coach, and I help clients stuck in quasi-recovery restore their health and end eating disorder behaviors so that they can regain their period, sleep through the night, improve body image, and have a peaceful relationship with food and exercise. And before I get started with today's episode, I want to mention that I'm taking on new clients again. And client work is the core of my business and is the thing that I actually enjoy the most. And after working with clients for 15 years, I feel confident in saying I'm very good at what I do. So if you want to get unstuck and reach a place of full recovery, I would love to help. You can head over to 7-health.com/help. And there you can read about how I work with clients and apply for a free recovery strategy call. At the time of recording this intro, there are 5 spots available. The address again is 7-health.com/help, and I'll put that link in the show notes. So on to today's show. This week it is a guest interview, and my guest today is Jenna Doak. Jenna is the co-founder and head trainer at Body Positive Fitness. She has worked in the fitness industry from a young age and started as a trainer over a decade before starting Body Positive Fitness. Jenna is on a mission to help people discover and appreciate their body's goodness, how it is, what it does, and what it can do. Jenna's approach to fitness is based in an anti-diet and health at every size perspective. She believes in joyful movement and creating inclusive spaces for all, especially anyone who hasn't felt at home in mainstream fitness spaces. So I've been aware of Jenna for a while now. I first heard her interviewed on Summer Inan's podcast and really enjoyed hearing her personal story with fitness and what Body Positive Fitness is all about. And so I wanted to invite her onto the show and have a conversation with her. And as part of this episode, we talk about Jenna's entry into the fitness industry at a young age and how exercise and changing her body became the dominant feature of her life. We talk about the breaking point and what her subsequent recovery looked like. And Jenna talks about being a personal trainer as her body changed and how she dealt with this. We cover her breast implant and explant surgery. She talks about the genesis of Body Positive Fitness and how this has grown over the years. And then we talk about many issues that come up with clients, like abstaining from exercise when it's needed, finding joy in movement after a compulsive or compensatory relationship with exercise, finding joy in movement for the first time in adult life, psychological flexibility with exercise, and lots more. For listeners of the podcast, Body Positive Fitness has a special offer for you to try out, so you can save 50% when you get the flexible 5-class pass. So you can go to bodypositivefitness.ca/promo, and then at the checkout, you can use the promo code REAL45. And I'll put a link to that in the show notes as well. So I really love this conversation, and I could have talked to Jenna for many hours. I'm glad that there are personal trainers like her out in the world. So without further ado, here is my conversation with Jenna Doak. Hey Jenna, welcome to Real Health Radio. Thanks for chatting with me today.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So you are a personal trainer and you run Body Positive Fitness. And so I definitely want to talk about this and the way that you do things today. But this is very different to how things were done before and your beliefs around health and fitness. And so it would really be great to just talk about your whole journey with this and how this has evolved over time. So let's start at the beginning. Like, what was your relationship with exercise or movement like as a child?
As a child, I don't recall having any relationship with movement or fitness or my body. But as a young teen, that's definitely where it started. I guess that is childhood. But my family owned a few gyms when I was growing up. So my first job ever when I was maybe 14 was folding towels at a gym, cleaning the mirrors at a gym.
Yeah.
And then I kind of just worked my way up in the gym industry. I've worked in a gym my whole life. So I was introduced to what the fitness industry looked like at a very young age, which immediately sent me down a spiral of needing to have a certain body.
And outside of that, like, were you someone who was playing soccer or little league or anything along those lines? Like, was there any sports for fun as a kid?
Yeah, you know what? Now that you say that, yeah, I did. I played soccer. I was never an athlete. My brother is an athlete, a super athlete, and my sister was a track runner. And my sister's older than me. My brother's younger than me. I'm the middle child, and I was not athletic, but I was put into soccer at a pretty young age, and I think I enjoyed it until I was like almost hitting puberty. And then I just got so self-conscious. I remember like when I had to wear a bra for the first time because I was one of the chubbier girls. So I had like a training bra and you could see it, the outline of it through my soccer jersey. And I remember being like so insecure about that even. And I think as soon as I started to develop, I shied away from sports because then I was suddenly uncomfortable.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's such a pivotal moment for so many people kind of hitting that teenage years and hitting puberty
Yeah.
and having their body change. I mean, were you someone who was quite self-conscious before that as well?
Yeah, I always did notice that I was bigger than my siblings in a sense. And now, of course, looking back at pictures of me when I'm 10, 11, 12 years old, I am just a little kid. But to think that that was already in my head, that I noticed that I was bigger than my sister and my brother, and to have realized that so young, and that is before I was even introduced to the fitness industry.
Yeah. And is it because just even when you reference your brother, you're like, oh, he's a super athlete, and you talked about your sister, it feels like you saw them more as athletes or more as enjoying sport, and you were less able at doing that or less capable of doing that or less enjoy doing that. And that maybe had an impact on your sense of self and body image.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it was elementary school that my sister, like my whole family would go to the track meets to watch my sister run. And I was always a spectator. I never made any track teams or had a sport that I excelled at. And yeah, that definitely played a role in how I felt about myself.
Yeah. And was there pressure and maybe like, I mean, kind of pressure that you put on yourself or pressure from your parents because they owned gyms and there was like this gym within the family? Was there any of like, I know this from a young age and so I have to be a certain way because this is what our family does?
I don't think that there was pressure from my parents. So the gym that was owned by my uncle. So it wasn't like
Okay.
a directly in the house owned business, but I do remember that I was always the one who like would go for walks with my mom in the evening or go for runs. And I think they did try to encourage me to be active, but not in a negative way.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Like my brother and my sister definitely never went for runs or walks with my mom in the evening. And I don't know if that's because they got their sports in during the day, or I don't know why that happened that way. But I don't recall there being any negative pressure put on me. I think I quickly learned how to put that pressure on myself.
Okay. And what about your relationship with your body as a kid? Was that fine and that then started to change again around puberty? Or actually, when you think back, that there was something that was just a little off there as well?
There was definitely something that was a little off there early on. Like I recall laying in bed at night and I was pretty young and like I would like lay on my side and like see how much fat I could pinch on my belly when I was like laying on my side. I remember so distinctly doing that and trying to take like mental measurements of how much fat there was there or wasn't there. I would probably put myself at like 10 years old doing that. So yeah, there was definitely something off there very early.
Okay. And was that coming from the household? Like, can you remember that coming from relatives or friends or anything along those lines, or it was more society in general?
It was probably more society in general. I do have one memory of like one of my little cousins who's a couple years younger than me calling me fat when I was like 8. Like
Yeah,
that stuck with me.
yeah,
And I think I was obviously one of the bigger kids, but not even by a lot. And it's just wild that that is in kids' minds so young, even for my cousin who was probably 6 years old at the time, calling
yeah,
me fat at 8, and then that's sticking with you. But this is like early 90s, right? So I'm sure it was all over the place. Like it still is, but it was
yeah.
probably worse than like magazines and TV and the advertisements around us. So it's just in your head so young. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think it was probably outside pressures more than like family or friends.
Yeah. And it is amazing how much like one comment like that can just stick out, where
Oh
there is
yeah.
this thing that happens and you probably, if you mention it to the cousin, I bet you they don't even remember that situation happening. But for you, it is
Right.
like this really pinnacle moment.
Yeah, I remember I remember where I was. We were at the cottage, we were in the water. I remember what my bathing suit looked like. Like I remember what bathing suit I was wearing. And
Yeah.
absolutely for sure that's the only thing I remember about probably that year of my life.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it's pretty wild. It's pretty wild how that has such a huge impact.
And what about food in your household and food growing up? Like what was that looking like?
We didn't have the most money growing up, so I always wished that we had all the cool snacks that the other kids had, like fruit roll-ups and the little like luncheons that everybody had.
Yeah.
I always wished we had those things. I realize now the reason that we didn't was because we couldn't afford to have those things. So our food was pretty basic. Peanut butter sandwiches, crackers and cheese, And I don't think that my parents were very absorbed in diet culture at the time. I think it was just like the simple snacks that met the budget that came into our house. My mom always went to the gym on a regular basis, did fitness classes on a regular basis, and would strive to eat healthy, or in her mind what was healthy. And I do remember there being encouragement for me to eat healthy over my siblings. Like there was more mind paid to it when it came to me. But compared to some of the other stories I hear about what families were like with diet culture back then, I don't think it was that bad.
Yeah. And I guess though, if you already have this feeling that my body is bigger, if there's already this feeling that I'm not as good at sports, and then there's this feeling that I'm getting a little more attention about what I'm eating, like all of these things can very easily compound.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
And so you said you then started working in a gym from fairly young. So what was that experience like?
It was intimidating at first, because I already had these insecurities, right? And the only reason I got the job was because it was a family business that was like, here's a position for this teenager to work.
Yeah.
Uh, it wasn't necessarily because those were my interests or that's where I wanted to be. So I felt insecure right from the jump. Like felt like maybe I shouldn't be standing here at this front desk.
Yeah.
Looking back, it's so funny because it's adults that are coming in to work out, and I'm literally this little teenager. For sure, nobody thought much of me, but I was so surrounded with like all the fitness magazines and the protein shakes that we were selling, and people getting their measurements done, and people being weighed, and people being sold personal training, and so I was so surrounded by that right away that it's all I paid attention to.
Yeah.
It's all
Yeah.
it's all I thought about. Yeah.
And just sort of via osmosis, being at that young and impressionable age, there's this feeling of like, oh, this must be important, or this must be
Yeah.
something that I should care about. And so, at
Yeah.
what point did you then actually start using the gym and start participating?
I started using it on my own right away. Like after I finished my shift at the gym, I would go get on the treadmill or the elliptical, the machines that I could figure out how to use.
Yep.
But as far as like weight training goes or any like steady programming, I think I was 16. I think I was in grade 10 or 11. The gym, we were having a 3-month competition for the members. And then the staff had like their little side competition. And it
Okay.
was basically a weight loss competition. Like it was, you do all your measurements at the beginning of the program and your weight and your body fat. And then you bust your ass for 12 weeks and then you do them again at the end. And it was basically whoever had the most change in their body won a pot of money. And the pot of money was probably like $300. But when you're in grade 10, that's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money. Yeah, yeah, for sure. Back in the 90s, that's a lot of money.
Yeah. And so I signed up for the staff competition. And so I hired a personal trainer. I think I worked with the trainer 3 times a week, but I was working out like 6 days a week. And then I still have my laminated before and after pictures from this competition. And there's literally like, you cannot even see a difference in my body at all. But I had lost like, I don't know, 15 pounds or something. And I was so competitive in that and got so into it. And that was the start of the very disordered relationship with exercise and food, for sure.
Right. And I mean, there's just so many things wrong with that on so many levels.
Oh, yeah.
Like you at that age, I mean, I'm not advocating weight loss for anyone, but you at that age, like you should not be going down that route. Like you're developing, you're going through puberty. You're like, this is a time where you're like, even if your weight is stagnant, that can often be a problem. So like, this is not like, there's a huge red flag that was being encouraged for you.
Yeah. And it was so incredibly celebrative, everybody in the gym was encouraging each other and so impressed by each other and checking in on how much weight did you lose this week. And that's when like my body checking became very obsessive too. Like always, like I'd be sitting in class in school and like feeling my body here and there, again, trying to take these mental measurements of like what changes were happening. And it was just so celebrated. And I was so young.
Yeah. And outside of that, like, did you have a sense of self? Like, I'm wondering where else you were getting validation, whether that be internal validation or external validation. Like, did you have that in other areas in your life at that point?
No, zero. And that continued for a very long time. Like the gym became me and I became the gym. And that was my only redeeming quality as far as I was concerned. And the only thing that I felt celebrated for a very, very long time.
Yeah. And so was this really the thing that fueled you then to becoming a personal trainer?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. I became a personal trainer as soon as I could. So you have to be 18 in Canada to be a personal trainer. So I continued to work at the gym, do reception, sell memberships, work out every day. And then when I was 18, I signed up for the course and got certified.
And was it just personal training that you qualified in or did a certification in, or was it also looking at people's diets and getting into the food side of things?
No, I never got into nutrition. That being said, doesn't mean I didn't cross the line and tell everybody what to eat when I had no business doing that, like every other personal trainer does.
Yeah.
So no, I never did any. I did my personal training certification and then my fitness instructor certification, which is just like group classes. But no, I never got a nutrition certification.
Okay. And so when you were doing this, like what was going on in terms of your own relationship with food and exercise? Like,
oh, it was all I cared about. I still at the time, so this is like 17 years ago now, which is wild.
Yeah.
I was still working reception at the gym and then starting my personal training business at the same time. So I would have like a couple clients, here and there, but then the rest of my hours were filled with working the front desk. And I worked the evening shift for a long time. It was from 2 till 10 p.m. And later in the evening, the gym was pretty quiet. And I would spend my time Googling bodies and finding the ones that I liked and printing them off and laminating them. Like, first of all, sorry to my uncle. I probably use so many of your supplies for bullshit. Laminating these bodies that I liked. And I had a binder and I would put them all in the binder and I would write my programs and I would plan my meals. And like, I remember, so the gym at this time was attached to a grocery store. And I would go to the grocery store to get my lunch or my dinner, and I would get just deli meat and mustard. No bun, no cheese, no other sandwich fixings, just meat and mustard, because I knew that mustard had like no calories. And I used to eat that like daily for lunch. And it wasn't even about nutrition at the time. It was really about like what can taste kind of good that has no calories.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was just obsessive, like constantly planning what my body is going to look like.
Yeah. With the goal of what were you hoping to achieve by having that body?
I think at the beginning of my career as a personal trainer, it was that I wanted to look like a personal trainer because I thought I would do better as a trainer and have a better career and have more clients if people looked at me and went, I want to look like her.
Yeah.
And so a lot of it was that. And then of course the compliments and the praise and the looks from other people, just that, like, that validation is what I was looking for. So a mix between making money in this career by looking a certain way and just people thinking I was attractive, I guess.
And so with those two, like, did you having a better body, did that help you as a personal trainer? Did that actually come to fruition?
I became so I got certified at 18. I stayed at the gym here in my hometown for just a year. And then I moved downtown Toronto to work in the financial district at a gym. So the people that work in the financial district have a lot more money to spend than people in smaller towns up north, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think that my body is what made me, I know now that my body is not what made me more money or made me a better personal trainer. Turns out I'm just really good at it. I'm a good personal trainer. I care about people.
Yeah.
That's always been a strength. I listen to people. I'm fun to be around. I love talking with people. I love getting to know people. These are all the things that really create a successful career in anything that your career is based off relationships with people, right?
Yeah.
At the time, I probably didn't realize any of those things and still thought I'm being hired and these people are staying with me because I look a certain way or I can get them to look a certain way. And in time, I realized, no, it's because I'm building relationships with these people and they like me.
Yeah. And that, I mean, that's so nice that you're now able to see that and to see that actually this is not about the aesthetics. Like, I have these core competencies and skills, and this is actually what people genuinely care about. So I think that's great that you're at that place now. And with the other thing you mentioned in terms of like the external validation from other people, how much did that actually fill you up? Like, getting that compliment from someone, how much did that then lead to you internally feeling like, yeah, I'm worth it?
Never, nothing, zero. It made me more empty, because I was always like striving to feel that a certain way.
Yeah.
And because I wasn't feeling a certain way, it's like I was always reaching for more. And so as like time goes on and now I'm in my young 20s, like I am not okay. I am angry. I am very jealous. I'm not a good partner. I'm not a good friend. I'm not a good family member. I exercise through anger. Like, I was a big runner at the time and I would listen to the angriest music when I went for my runs, right? Like it was all about like this release of like these awful feelings that I had all the time. And again, not realizing that until I look back, it's like, it's because I was searching for this validation and happiness and contentment through something that was never going to happen because you don't get that from other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that, I mean, that was kind of why I asked this question, because I wanted to get a sense of like, did it actually make a difference for you? Because I think there is
No.
this real belief of like, once I get this thing, and this thing being that body, that then I'll feel at home, or then
Right.
I will feel worthy, or then I will finally relax or feel confident, or whatever it is. And the reality is, it always is just out of reach.
Yeah, exactly.
And so when did you reach the point of realizing, okay, this is unsustainable, or this isn't doing the thing that I thought it was going to do? Like what happened?
It was a long journey. um, Things just got worse and worse for me. You know, I then like my biggest goal in life in my early 20s was to be a fitness model and then be the youngest, most successful fitness model. And constantly, like I had a personal trainer that I worked with 5 days a week. And I was a personal trainer, and I definitely couldn't afford to have a personal trainer 5 days a week.
Yeah.
Somehow I managed to make that happen. And it was like fake tan, hair extensions, eyelash extensions, full face of makeup, jewelry, new clothes, perfect gym clothes, breast implants. I ended up getting breast implants because I figured that will make me better, of course.
Yeah.
That's a whole other story. Don't have those anymore and do not recommend getting them. Anyway, it was just this constant chase. And then alcohol became a problem and drugs became a problem and my temper and my relationship. It was so much just building and building. And I was so unhappy. And then I had run out of resources. I spent all my money on various substances and whatnot. So I came home. I moved home. I left Toronto. I told my parents I needed 6 months at home to get my shit together. And then coming home, like really healed me. Just
Nice.
like being with my parents or being with my siblings now, like 10 years later, you know, and just like enjoying life in a calmer way, I guess, and being away from the city and the people I hung out with in the city. And then I met my now husband. At the time, I was 26 when I
Yeah.
met him, and he loved me from the second he saw me, and he has never ever made me feel like I needed to be something other than like who I actually was authentically, which I kind of figured out in my time with him because I had
Yeah.
been trying to be something else for so long. And I think that slowly started to like undo everything I had thought and learned about everything. Not even just like about myself and my body, just like about society. And
Yeah.
like what are we doing? Like I really feel like I came out of like this brainwashing cult that I was in for like a decade and then got to look at it from a different angle. Probably because somebody loved me for me, which
No.
sounds so cheesy, but it's true.
No, I mean, I think that is true for so many people. Like there are many clients I've had where actually them meeting their partner through recovery was a really important thing, because sometimes you need someone else to help show you the thing that you can't see on your own.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so with this recovery and sort of coming back to your parents and getting away from the city and all of these changes, did you were you continuing to work as a personal trainer throughout this, or did you stop as a personal trainer?
No, I continue to work as a personal trainer. I slowed things down on my end on training myself. I continue to train all my clients. it just so happened like at the same time, this is going to come back to like the breast implants.
Yeah.
I had a knee injury that was just ruthless. I could hardly walk. I was wearing a knee brace and still working as a personal trainer, which that made it hard. And I was seeing all sorts of doctors, and I was seeing an arthritis doctor trying to figure out like if it was arthritis. And I ended up getting a cortisone shot in my knee, which took the pain away for like a couple months. And I could not figure out why my knee was so messed up, because all of the imaging, x-rays, ultrasound, all of that, there was nothing wrong with my knee. It was just reacting to something in a bad way, but nobody could
Yeah.
figure it out. And I had a slightly sore breast at the same time. And then I was like, I need to get this looked at. So it turned out, long story short, and this is a whole other thing, is that I had a ruptured implant.
Yeah.
And now studies are being done on implants that a lot of people are being diagnosed with arthritis and joint problems and all sorts of issues because of implants. So I ended up having my implants removed and literally woke up from surgery from having my implants removed, and all of the swelling had gone down in my knee and I never felt knee pain again.
Wow.
So they were connected.
And it was interesting, like I read, because you've done a whole article on this as part of the blog for your site, and I read that today, and I actually, as I was reading through, I was like, this is just like the perfect metaphor of everything you went through in terms of like spending all of this time and all this money to get the implants, being way over your head in trying to actually afford to pay for these things.
Yeah.
And then when you got them just causing you all of this issues for many, many years, until the point that you then had to have them removed, and then things got better. And I was like, it just feels like this is the exact same as what happened in terms of your relationship with exercise and the way that you were a personal trainer and all of these things. I was like reading a thing. Yeah. This is a really lovely metaphor for kind of the broader thing of what happened.
Yeah, exactly. And it was like the timing also was exactly on. And it was a blessing in disguise because I didn't want my implants anymore, but they were stuck in me.
Yeah.
And I was healing my relationship with my body, and I didn't like them. I didn't like the way they felt. I wanted them out. But if there's no injury to the implant, then you have to pay to get them out. And I didn't have the money to get rid of them. So I felt stuck. And because there was a rupture, the Ontario Health program will cover it. So it was covered by OHIP. So that was just like a blessing in disguise. And I was so happy to get them out. The surgeon tried to convince me to get new ones in, and like that would be covered too. I wouldn't have to pay for it. And I was like, no, I'd never want these ever again. Yeah. But anyway, so that injury, the knee, and then getting the implants out and the recovery and all of that, it stopped me from working out completely, which was exactly also what I needed at the time. So my training for my own body was on hiatus for like at least a year.
Yeah.
And that allowed me to like sit with the discomfort of like, who am I when I don't work out?
Yeah.
And who am I if I'm not actively trying to make my body smaller, you know?
Yeah.
And my husband, who we were only like, I want to say maybe a year or two into our relationship when this all happened. And I went from working out all the time with my implants and my makeup and my hair and all this stuff to gaining probably 50 pounds. I shaved my head. I got rid of my implants. I stopped wearing makeup. And he didn't even blink an eye. Like to him, I didn't change at all.
Yeah.
And to me, that was like, whew, never felt this before.
Nice.
Yeah. So that played a huge role in figuring out who I was without all of the add-ons.
Yeah. And it sounds like I mean, I don't know how much the knee played the role in you having to take time off exercise, but that being forced upon you or you being able to make that choice, whichever one it really was a really big, was a really important part of this.
Yeah, it was huge. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think you could have got to this place without taking time off?
No, not at all.
Okay.
And it was forced upon me. Like I could hardly walk, let alone let alone work out. So it was forced upon me, and I'm thankful for that now.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is like I have this conversation often with clients about taking time off. And I think there's so much about how healthy exercise is and how important it is and all of that, that it becomes difficult for people to think, well, I should take some time off. But I think like when I think about taking time off from exercise for the clients that I work with, like it's twofold. Like one is your body physically needs to have time off exercise. It physically needs to repair, and you're just not able to do that if you're continuing to exercise. But B, the whole point with this as well is psychological flexibility. Like you want to have the ability to say, you know what, right now I am not going to exercise. And that could be, again, because of something being forced upon you, or it could be just, you know what, this can't be my priority right now. I've got something else that I need to be focusing on.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was kind of reflecting on this. In November time, I hurt my knee. And this is the first time I've ever had an injury, really. I broke my wrist snowboarding and that kind of thing, but had something happen that was quite sort of significant. I went to the trampoline park with my son, and about 20 minutes in, just jumping very normally, I jumped and heard this horrible popping sound and went kind of sheet white. And hilariously, that morning I'd been talking with my wife, and she was like, look, we're going to a hotel this weekend. Please, like nothing can happen at the trampoline park. Because the year previously we were meant to go to a hotel for our combined birthdays, and she was thrown off a horse like the day of it and tore her tricep from her elbow. And we then didn't make it to the hotel. So we're like, look, this year we're going to definitely make it. And so then I heard this horrendous popping sound. My knee swelled up, and I was like, okay, this is not good. So thankfully we did make it to the hotel, but it's been now kind of quite a number of months of me having to rehab and me having to not really be able to do very much at all. Like the advice I've had is, okay, you need to keep stretching it and you need to move. So movement is good, but I'm pretty limited in my movement, or I was when I started. And it's been interesting to notice this, that I've been annoyed that I can't do certain things. And actually, in the whole scheme of things, it hasn't bothered me that much in terms of the fact that I can't do exercise. What has become crystal clear for me now is like, I really want to focus on mobility, on functional stuff, on like, how can I be doing things to prevent this from happening again, and being able to have a kind of injury-free life as much as I possibly can. But it wasn't a tough thing for me not to be able to exercise. And I was just kind of, really joyous that is the place that I find myself in.
Yeah. Yeah. And I talk to clients about that often. Like exercise, you want to get to the place that it's something that you enjoy adding to your life, but you're completely fine without it. Like you don't rely on it. And and people often stress like, oh, it's for my mental health, it's for my stress, it's for this. But if that's the only thing that you rely on for your mental health and your stress, like that's not a good thing either. You need to have other coping skills.
Yeah.
And to learn that, like maybe sitting down and doing a paint by numbers or coloring or knitting or reading, maybe all of these other things can also be a stress relief for you. It doesn't have to be go for a run or go lift weights. And I think a lot of people do get caught up in the like, well, I do it for my health or my mental health. And it's like, that's not good if that's your only outlet. So it is really important to get to a place that it's like, yeah, you actually enjoy it and you want to add it to your life, but you're okay if you can't. Because things like that happen, injuries happen, sickness happens. What if you got into a car accident and you can't release through your body like that for years,
Yeah.
There are lots of reasons that movement and fitness can be taken away from you, and if that's your only thing, then that's a dangerous spot to be in.
Yes, definitely. And I think for a lot of people who do find themselves in that spot, the exercise has morphed into something a lot more like compulsion as opposed
Yeah,
to like true relief.
yeah, oh for sure.
And so with the recovery piece, were you talking a lot about this with your family? Like again, I know like gyms are in the family. So was this something that kind of came up and were they sort of on board with your shift in how you were thinking about things?
I think so. It was kind of like a slow progression. I was going through healing my relationship with fitness and exercise and my body and eating for a couple years before I started to like really be open about it. And I started blogging about it, and that's kind of how body positive fitness came about. Is I just started with a blog and talking about my history with the fitness industry and my experiences, and then I started posting a little bit on Instagram about it. And I remember when I first started posting on Instagram about it, I actually made the account anonymous because I was afraid for what the people in the fitness industry that have known me for so long, like what they would think about what I was saying.
Yeah.
And it was anonymous for maybe like the first 6 months. And then I think it was my husband who was like, you need to show who you are talking about this. And as soon as I started to show face and be honest about who I was and where I was coming from, then it just snowballed so fast. It was kind of scary. It was like every news network in Toronto got a hold of me. You know, everybody wanted to interview me. I was on all of the evening news, on TV, on radio, on podcasts, interviews every week. And it just blew up. And it was this wild mix between people saying, oh, you just gave up. You're fat now. You're just making excuses because you couldn't do it any longer. Why would anybody hire you as a personal trainer? Blah, blah, blah. And then this overwhelming tenfold of support from people going, thank you for talking about this. And I need a personal trainer like you. And it was way more support than it was negativity.
Yeah.
And I would say my family was proud of me for coming out and being honest about it. But at the same time, they were probably like pretty sad. Like they didn't know how much it hurt me.
Yeah.
And it was probably hard for them to wrap their heads around like, oh, we just thought you were like a super fitness star, you know? And we were proud of you for that. But sure, if you don't want to be that, then okay, we support that. But we didn't know that it was that bad, you know?
Yeah.
So there was support there, but then I also think there was confusion and some people probably that don't agree with some of the things I say, which is expected because everybody's brainwashed about what our bodies are supposed to look like. So yeah, there was a good mix between negativity and teaching lessons and then a lot of people that really wanted to hear what I was saying. And then that's when I ran my first body positive movement class, which we now call a BOPO move class. And I did it from an art space. It's called Artscape Young Place in Toronto.
Yeah.
I rented a space there, and my whole goal was to teach people like, you don't need to come to a gym. You can do this at home. And this is way before the pandemic. You can do this at home. You don't need weights. You don't need bands. You don't need anything. Let's just move our bodies. No measuring tapes. I'm not going to weigh you. I'm not going to talk about your body. I'm like trying to teach people this new way of fitness. And as healing as that was for the clients that wanted to come to those types of classes, it was healing for me to be able to take my work away from the place that ruined me.
Yeah.
And I was able to step away from all that toxic gym culture and just teach people in a friendly environment, like, let's move our money, or let's move our bodies for fun, and not, you know, to try to look a certain way. So all of that happened very quickly as soon as I started to be open about my journey. And then it just, to this day, is still snowballing every day.
Wow. How did you handle that kind of tidal wave of people being interested. Like it's one thing to have an anonymous account where you're talking about your experiences. It's another to be doing multiple podcast interviews, being interviewed for national news, all of that.
It was exhausting and exhilarating, and I was very proud of how I handled it because I wasn't used to it and I didn't know I could do it. But it was like, I can't say no to these opportunities.
Yeah.
I had never gone into an interview and not been sick to my stomach, nervous about it. And I remember like waking up at 5 a.m. to get downtown to a news station for 6 a.m. to do the morning news, and I'm just like so jittery and exhausted, and nerves and excitement got me through all of it. But to this day, I still find it nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
But I handled it, and I was proud that I was able to, because it is an uncomfortable situation, and especially when you're talking about something that is so vulnerable to you. And when I first started to get the negative feedback, like it hurt me, like it, yeah. and I would read all of the comments, and it broke my soul. Like I would cry, I would feel sick about it, I would question myself. But you read enough of the same negative comments over and over again, then that gets old. So I'm okay with that.
This one again.
Yeah, exactly. So that doesn't hurt me anymore, and I barely read them. But at the beginning, it was hard. It was an emotional roller coaster for sure. But I knew that what I was doing was for good.
Yeah. And did the fact that you were able to start doing the class, you said it was healing for the participants, but also very healing for you. Was there a point where you were thinking, okay, I'm going to walk away from personal training, and this then helped you think, maybe I can navigate my way through it? Or you were pretty confident from the beginning, like, I will find my way?
I was confident from the beginning that I will find my way, because that's when I learned, oh no, people don't hire me for my body. Like there are more people in the world, more potential clients that feel like they want a trainer like me than they want a trainer like every other trainer out there. There are more people in the world that feel shunned from the fitness industry than there are people that feel like they're a part of it, you know? So I very quickly realized after that very first body positive movement class that I hosted, oh, there's no shortage of work here. There are more people that would rather work out with me in a library than there are people that would want to work out with Joe at the gym, you know?
Yeah.
So it was very eye-opening very quickly how many people needed what I was about to provide.
Yeah. And were you, and maybe this had already happened as part of your own journey, but you were sort of reading about health at every size and kind of getting into all of that material?
Yeah. Yeah, I was well into that by the time I ran my first class. I had read all the books and done all the studies, not all of them, of course, but I was well versed in what I was about to teach people.
Yeah.
Before I started talking about it.
And so what does the class or classes look like now? Like how are they different from the regular gym?
Well, there is absolutely no body related goals in any of our classes that we teach. Now we have a really wide variety of classes and a whole bunch of different instructors. But regardless of the class, there's no, like, for example, we just started a class called BOPO Heavy, which is about heavy lifting, like doing big lifts, deadlifts, overhead press, bench press, squats. And it's about improving your lifts, right? And when I was teaching the new instructor on how I used to teach this class before the pandemic in person, we're just coming back to it. The instructor asked me, well, are we keeping track of what people are lifting, say day 1, and then week 6 and week 8? Like, are we keeping track of their deadlift progression?
Yeah.
And the answer to that is no. If that person wants to go home and write down what they did that day, by all means, they can do that. We're not going to stop them from doing that. But even when it comes to tracking how much you're lifting, we're not measuring any of these things. We're not measuring these things because we don't want you to get obsessed with a number, even if it's not the scale or the size of your body. There's also no reason to get obsessed with how much you can deadlift.
Yeah.
Some people enjoy lifting heavy and hitting these new like PRs, and they can do that on their own. But as a personal trainer, we're not pushing that on you. We're not measuring how fast you can run, how far you can run, how much you can lift, how far you can stretch. Every single class that we teach is about enjoying what you're doing,
Yeah.
and doing it for, yes, the physical benefits, because it makes you feel better and you're stronger and you're more limber and your cardiovascular system is working great. And like there are all these things, but they don't need to be measured is the main thing. We don't measure anything. Goal setting is not a let's see what we can strive by this amount of time. It's a day-to-day check-in, and teaching people that the way you feel one day is not the way you're going to feel in 2 days or next week or next month. And you'll go forward and you'll go backwards. And it's all about like being fluid in your movement journey, not setting benchmarks and always chasing something. And I think that's the biggest difference in our philosophy of why we work out compared to every other fitness company out there.
Nice. I really like that, because it sounds as though it's a kind of combination of the enjoyment of the process,
Yeah.
with the sort of added benefit of like, I do feel better in lots of different ways outside of the gym, but I'm actually not really focusing so much on that.
Yeah. And like, it's also recognizing that it doesn't always feel better and it doesn't always feel good, and it shouldn't. Like, there are days that you're going to come for, whether it's a weight training workout or a yoga class, that you're going to go like, I'm not into this today.
Yeah.
I don't like it. And the answer to that is, okay, that's fine. Go home. Shut off your computer if you're doing this from home. We don't want people to feel like they have to come and stay ever if you're not feeling it.
Yeah.
And then not to be mad at yourself and not beat yourself up. Like, there are going to be days and months and weeks and maybe years that you're just like, this is not for me right now. And we support that. And not only support that, we encourage that. We want people to be honest with themselves about how they feel about what they're doing.
Nice. And I guess there are going to be times where you're recognizing in other people what was going on in you, and sort of suggesting, hey, maybe you need to be taking a step back from exercise right now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I have quite a few clients that it's a lot of it is kind of just talking about why they're feeling that they need to do this. I have clients that'll be like, but I'm not even sweating and my heart rate. I'm like, it's not about that. We need to take it down a notch. Like I'm often coaching people that they need to step away from that mindset that a workout needs to be X, Y, Z.
Yeah. And how, I know this is going to differ from person to person, but how is that typically taken when you're giving someone or suggesting this to someone?
It does definitely vary about like how far somebody's into like their journey of trying to heal their relationship with exercise. Also, sometimes people will be like, "Oh, like thanks for catching me on that. Like I didn't realize I was pushing too hard, or I didn't need to add weight, or I didn't need to do 5 extra reps, or I don't need to come back on Thursday," stuff like that. And then there's other clients that they really don't like it. They don't want to be told not to do what they want to do. And then it's like just turns into a conversation of like, hey, so why do you feel that way? Like why would you sweating right now for this half an hour change anything about like who you are next week? And just like kind of digging into like why there's so much resistance and pushback to slowing down. And it is just about them realizing that like, okay, they're not where they thought they were maybe with their relationship to exercise. So some people are more accepting of it. Other people, there's a bit more of a pushback, but it always starts there.
Yeah.
It always starts with the pushback. Yeah.
And with you personally, like when you were going through this transition yourself, did you get therapy or did you get counseling or did you get outside support? I know you mentioned how loving your husband was, but was that coming from anyone with sort of professional training?
Not specifically, but there were accounts and people that I followed and spoke to online who were going through similar journeys. So there were other Instagram accounts or body positive activists, whatever you want to call them, that
Yeah.
were also healing from the fitness industry specifically. So they were people that I communicated with and watched their journeys unfold, and got support from.
Nice.
But no specific therapist. And that's another thing, like even that's hard to find still, which sucks.
Yeah.
Is a therapist who actually understands this stuff.
Definitely. I think it is so tricky. I was just having an email exchange today with a client who has a therapist who is clearly not helping in this regard. And it's so tricky because there's a part of me that is like getting the right therapist is just so crucial and so helpful and I think is what is needed. And then there's a part of me that's like, I also know how much this can be messed up.
Yeah. And it's such a fine line too.
Yeah. I mean, if you had your time over again, would you think that getting that extra support, again, granted, if it was the right kind of person, would have been helpful for you?
I don't know why, and I don't think it's common, but for some reason, I was able to navigate this on my own pretty successfully.
Okay.
But I do think that it would be helpful for so many people. Like there are things people need this extra support for that I'm not qualified to give it to them, even though I've had my own journey. And it sucks that like when people ask me for recommendations, I don't have any because I don't know very many therapists that get this situation. Would it have helped me? Probably, yes. But I do feel lucky that I got to the point that I'm at on my own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I know at the beginning you were saying, okay, you're not the natural athlete or the person who enjoys moving their body. Like, what does that look like for you now? Like, are you someone who is like, yep, I've definitely found joyful movement?
Yeah. So before the pandemic, when I got back into working out, I loved like weight training. I love weight training. I always have. But doing it in this new mindful way was really enjoyable for me. And then when the pandemic happened, it was interesting because we all got stuck at home and my business went 99% virtual and it is still largely virtual.
Yeah.
I didn't really have the motivation to like lift heavier weights in my basement. It just wasn't the right vibe for me. But I got into other things that I never thought I would do or enjoy. One of them is mobility. And that was a just happenstance. I had to fill in for one of our yoga instructors, and I don't teach yoga. So I taught a stretch and mobility class. And the clients loved it so much that it ended up turning into a class that we put on our schedule. And now I've been teaching it for a couple of years. And in doing that mobility training a couple times a week, my body has never felt better. And
Nice.
I don't do heavy weight training and I don't do cardio. And this mobility stuff has just been so good for me. Like I just feel physically just better. And it's not something that I knew I liked until I taught it by accident.
Yeah.
So it was fun figuring that out. And then I moved up north. So I'm away from the city and we have tons of hiking trails around where I live, and I have a dog that needs a lot of exercise. So I hike many times a week, and I really, really love hiking, and never knew that I would love that as much as I do.
Yeah.
So the enjoyment that I have right now are those two things, really, the mobility stuff and hiking. And like I said, like that might change. There might come a time in my life where I'm back in a studio that has heavy weights and I get back into that. But right now it's those things that I'm really enjoying and I don't feel like I need to add anything else in.
Nice. We recently moved to Scotland, and so I am also looking forward to getting into more of the hiking because it's just absolutely gorgeous around here, and it just like you want to be, or at least for me, I want to be out in it. Like it's not me trying to push myself and saying, "Oh, you've got to." It's like, no, I genuinely just want to be out in those kind of spaces.
Yeah, and it's like I mentioned at the beginning, not everybody knows this yet, but they'll know soon. I'm pregnant. So my hiking has really, really slowed down.
Yeah.
It's also very snowy here right now. So it's like you're walking through like thick snow. The fact that I've had to slow down so much is also super enjoyable in a sense because that's new for me as well. I don't measure how far and how fast and all these things in my hikes. It's just about getting out there and like really focusing on your body awareness and breathing and how are you feeling. And even more so now that I have to care for my pregnancy, none of it's about it being exercise. It's literally just because like I enjoy it. It feels good for me mentally and physically. So yeah, it's cool.
Nice. Did you take some time off at the start of pregnancy? And the reason I'm asking is for lots of clients, the first trimester is just horrendous. And they're like, I feel so terrible. I've got so much nausea. Like it just sidelines people. And so they will often, stop. If they are doing any exercise, it kind of naturally comes to an end during that first trimester, at least for a month or a couple months. What happened with you?
Yeah, I was so sick. I was so sick. I didn't hike for like probably 2 months, 3 months. And then my fitness classes that I was teaching virtually, I just did as little as possible. I ended up having to tell some people really early, like with clients, that I'm like, this is why my morning class keeps getting canceled every day because I'm throwing up. And then luckily I have a lot of great instructors that work with us. So I was able to get a lot of coverage at the beginning as well for my teaching.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely slowed down a lot. And I've just started like within the past like month or so getting out to my walks more often.
Yeah. Yeah. I do think pregnancy can also be a time that sort of helps you to readjust the way that you eat, to readjust the way that you move, because it is forced upon you. And in a sense, like I talk about this often with clients, like there becomes these guardrails that are put on because you can try and convince yourself you want salad, but really the thing that you're wanting is fish and chips or mac and cheese or something like quote unquote unhealthy that you would normally think about eating, but your body is telling you unconvincing or very convincingly that is exactly what it needs.
Yeah, no, exactly. And it's like survival mode. Like for a while, it's like even if what you're eating has no substance, at least it's something, like for a while for me, it's just like saltine crackers.
Yeah.
And like peanut butter, you start eating for, just doing what you can rather than even enjoyment or nutrition.
Totally. Yeah. It's kind of acceptance. It's like, it is what it is. And given this is how it is, how do I get some food in?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And with just the finding joy part with movement, how did you go about doing that? Because it's just something that comes up a lot for clients. And I guess with clients who've had this very tumultuous relationship with exercise, or people who are still in the depths of their exercise compulsion, who can recognize that they don't actually want to be doing what they're doing, they don't enjoy it, but they are having to keep it up as part of their disorder. There is this fear of like, if I stop, I will never start up again. I will never find any joy in movement. And so I just want to get a sense from you, what was that process like of finding joy again?
Well, I think that before you can figure out what you actually enjoy is you actually have to actively practice getting rid of probably every single narrative you have tied to fitness. So, like, for example, if you're doing a dance class or a Zumba class and you are going absolutely as hard as you can, trying to follow the instructor's footwork to a T and not taking breaks because the music hasn't given you a break yet, and you're just pushing through it, then no, that's probably not going to be enjoyable, right?
Yeah.
But if you were to take that same class and realize you can't follow the instructor's feet and their upper body at the same time, so you're just going to follow the arms. And you really like this song, so you're just going to dance however you want to actually during this song because you can't figure out what the instructor is doing. You just want to do your own thing. Maybe you want to sing out loud. Maybe you're going to sit a song out because you need a water break or you don't like the song and you don't like the dance. You know, like if you start to make it your own
Yeah.
and you're actually able to accept that you did it in your own way and not followed some instructor to a T, then you might have fun doing it. And I think that a lot of people figured this out with virtual fitness because they had the space to do it on their own.
Yep.
And with our instructors, like we would never be like, "Hey, what are you doing? Sitting down," you know. So to actually give yourself room to make it how you would enjoy it is a huge factor. And probably any given fitness class that's offered anywhere right now, if I did it exactly how the instructor wanted me to do it, I probably wouldn't like it. So I think being able to give yourself permission and being in a space that gives you permission to do it in a way that feels good for you is key to actually enjoying it. Because you're not going to move your body the same way as somebody else. And if you try to, it might not feel good. But then you don't like it, you know? So one, give yourself space to make it your own, regardless of what type of class or instruction it is. Two, fitness does not have to be offered through a fitness center. And this is coming from somebody who owns a fitness center and makes my living from a fitness center. Don't come if it's not your thing, if you don't like it. Like maybe you really like tennis. Maybe you really like hiking. Maybe you like swimming. You know, maybe you like ping pong. Maybe you like throwing darts. You know, like movement doesn't have to be your traditional fitness class or personal training. So let yourself explore other things out there that maybe aren't traditional fitness. And it's still movement and it's still good for you. And more importantly, you are doing something that you enjoy that is not work or home life, you know? So I think that's more important than trying to find what type of exercise, quote unquote, exercise that you enjoy.
Nice. And I mean, that second one is something I talk a lot about with clients as well, is like, how do you get out of that very narrow idea of what is fitness or what it means to move your body? And there are so many options that are available to you. And so is there things that you used to like doing as a kid that you no longer do? Like, are there things that you have seen in a movie or you've heard that people do, but you've just never tried it yourself? Like, how can you really broaden your idea of what it means to move your body? And that also include ideas where it's not about, does this create a sweat, or is this going to help me burn calories or anything along those lines? It could be going and doing a qigong class. It could be going and doing something that feels like I'm not really even moving my body very much at the moment, but actually that's something that gets you connected with your body and actually gets you to really enjoy that experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing is that it doesn't need to be, you don't need to have a specific something scheduled into your calendar X amount of times per week, every week to be doing the right thing, you know? So for example, yesterday I was in my backyard with my 5-year-old nephew in a snowsuit building snowmen for 2 hours. Like that wasn't scheduled into my calendar to do this week for my exercise. But what do you think is better for your mind and your body and your well-being? Playing in the snow for 2 hours with a kid or riding your spin bike for half an hour at full tilt, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
When you're out just doing real world activities, you are moving your joints in so many different ways, and your heart is going and your blood is flowing and your mind is working and you're interacting. Like there's all of these things that are so healthy for us to do that are not like carved out exercise time. So when you look at the grand scheme of your life, depending on what kind of lifestyle you live, if you have kids that need to play in the snow on a Sunday, then you might not need to schedule in that much extra activity.
Yeah. Or there are lots of activities that you don't think of as being sort of moving your body. Like I had a call with a client recently, and she also lives somewhere where it's snowy, and she's now having to shovel snow many days of the week just to get out of her driveway or get out of her front door. And she wasn't realizing how much of an energy use that was. And so when she was then trying to add in something extra and then finding that that was having an impact on her sleep, it's like, no, you've added in this thing here that you're not recognizing of how much of an energy drain this is for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, for sure.
And with someone who, say, has taken a break from exercise, and they've taken a break because it was either compulsive or they're recovering from an eating disorder, and then they're starting to restart it, are there certain things that you suggest? And I know obviously we've just talked about the enjoyment aspect or the joy aspect of it, but is there any other ideas or advice that you would have with restarting, or is like how did you do it when you restarted it?
I think when you're restarting, you should try various things to begin with. So like very different things too. For example, hiking, walking, a dance class, weight training, mobility. Like try various types of ways to move your body to get a sense of what you enjoyed the most or the least, but to also start very slowly. So I don't mean Monday you dance, Tuesday you do mobility, Wednesday you go for a hike. I mean Monday you dance, and then in like 10 days maybe go for a hike, you know?
Yeah.
And then find a yoga class. Try things at home, try things in a studio, try things outside, make them different and space them apart so that you're not getting into the mindset again of, oh, I'm working out 3 days a week, or I'm working out 5 days a week, or whatever it is. And for some people, that's the hardest part is like, I will tell a client, like, you're not moving again intentionally for 10 days.
Yeah.
You know, like take that time to just be and then try something else. So those two things, starting slow and trying different things. And then if and I have this conversation with clients, in your mind, you're like, oh, I liked the hour spinning class the most out of everything you tried. Why did you like that the most?
Yeah.
Because you sweated the most? Okay, we're going to not do that one because you're taking it for the wrong reason, right? Like sometimes you want to hear like what mental notes they had during a certain exercise type of movement. So yeah, play with it. Don't make it rigid. Take it slow. Try different things. Challenge yourself on why you like or didn't like something. Like sometimes the best things for somebody is restorative yoga.
Yeah.
Where you're barely moving, and you'll get people that are like, well, it didn't really feel like a workout. I enjoyed it, and I cried a lot, but it didn't feel like a workout. So I don't want to make that. It's like, well, it sounds like maybe that should be the thing that you do this month, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, all of those things.
Nice. And so two things I would say connected to that, and I agree with all of those things. So one, the start slow piece is the conversation I have a lot with clients, and I encourage this for a long time. And so even at the point where it is they're going twice a week or 3 times a week, I suggest like have then 2 weeks where you don't do anything. Like keep proving that you have that psychological flexibility. Keep proving that you are in the driver's seat. Because unfortunately, it becomes very easy to be like, oh, I love doing these things and I'm really enjoying it. And then at some point, someone's back in that place of, I can't take a day off, and it's really difficult and anxiety provoking that they get sick and they can't work out, as opposed to them truly being able to be the one that is dictating how much they're working out. So even as 6 months on, a year on, 18 months on, great, let's try having some time off so that you can constantly prove to yourself that you can do this.
Yes, absolutely. And I've had that exact conversation and situation with clients. And sometimes it's like, oh, I'm going on vacation. Can you write me a program to do while I'm there? Like, why? You're on vacation. Just go. You don't need to do a program while you're there. Like, challenge yourself to go on vacation and not work out.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like I've had that conversation with many clients. It's like, oh, okay, that's noted. But no, you don't need to do this while you're away.
Yeah. And then the other one is trying to find something like we obviously talked about joy, but where you're a complete beginner and a novice in it. And I think part of this as well is that you're then starting afresh with something new that is not connected to your eating disorder or not connected to the compulsion of what you're doing before. But it's just a different experience when you're new to it, and how you think about that thing that you're new to. Like it's often more, I mean, it can be frustrating, but it also can be really fun. Like I'm thinking of a client who had lots of different exercise that they did when they were in their disorder, and a lot of it was running or cycling or like that kind of endurance type stuff. And then her and her partner got into playing tennis. And she's like, admittedly, I'm not very good at tennis, and neither is he, but we love just trying to have a rally. And it's just a whole different story when she's talking about tennis versus every other exercise that she was doing.
Yeah. Yeah. And that it just reminded me that my partner and I started trying to play tennis when I was in the middle of my taking a break from exercise, and I felt the same way. We had so much fun, and we were horrible at it, but it was so much fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what about someone who is trying to get into exercise maybe for the first time, or maybe trying to, for the first time, have a good relationship with exercise because they've always felt insecure in their ability to go to the gym, or they were the last picked in class, or whatever it may be? Like what is some of the advice that you have for someone like that?
Similar advice, because it's always, that's where you want to be. That's where you want to start, is that you try a variety of things so that you find what actually brings you joy, and to not set expectations. Don't put a plan out for yourself that you're going to do something X amount of times per week. Don't set goals on how fast you're going or how far you're going or calories burnt or weight loss, any of those things. Do not play with numbers. Just really listen to your body and do what feels good. You know, if it's weight training, don't try to go up in weight every time you pick up the dumbbells. You know, find a weight that feels good, work with it for a while. You know, really pay attention to how things feel in your body rather than chasing an end goal. Because if you are coming into fitness and movement to try to achieve something physically, you are going to be disappointed over and over and over again. So let's not start off on a foot that you're disappointed in yourself, and do it because you just want to, not because you're trying to be something different.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you're looking at the kinds of people who are coming to your class, it's like, what is the makeup of those people in terms of, is it people who are like we just talked about there, that they've just never really found their place with exercise and they're trying to now, and this feels like it could be the right thing for them, versus people who have had a not great relationship with exercise and maybe it was an eating disorder or that kind of thing? So yeah, what is the makeup?
I feel like it's almost like an exact split. Like we have a lot of people who come from disordered backgrounds with fitness
Yeah.
and eating and their bodies, and then also people who are like, oh, this feels like a safe place to try, that haven't had a safe place to try. So it is like those exact two demographics, I would say. And then we also have a big group of people who are maybe haven't done fitness for a long time.
Yeah.
So they're just coming back to it. Like I'm talking like 30 years. They're older and they're like, what do I do now? All these gyms are, pretty girls on spin bikes. So where do I go? Like the older demographic. So we get that as well. So I would say it's a mix between those people.
And with that, I'm just kind of thinking of that older demographic who is coming back to it. I know if you've been able to do something really, really well and then you haven't done it for a long time and coming back to it, there can be some frustration with that. Is that what can happen? Or there's been so much time passed and they're in their 50s and this was when they were a quarterback in high school, that so much time has passed that they're not really trying to recreate the glory days?
Fortunately, more of the latter. That it's people who, did X, Y, and Z when they were in their 20s and they got married and they had kids and they had their career and now they're 65, 70, retired and just trying to move their bodies again. And they're not expecting to be who they once were. And they can be surprised at how things feel now. But I do find that there's a lot of acceptance and that's just the stage of life they're in now, That being said, those are the people that have sought out body positive fitness probably for a reason.
Yeah.
And if they were trying to feel like they were 30 again, maybe they would be going somewhere else.
Yeah.
But I don't find that we get too many people who are like, well, you do hear it. When I was 30, I could do 20 push-ups from my toes, but it's a joking sense. Like, okay, well, now you're 70, so let's try from the wall, But no, I don't find that there's too many people in that age bracket that are that hard on themselves, which is awesome.
Okay. And how much of your classes are actual teaching of the movement or that kind of thing versus more of the education piece? Like, are you having conversations about, I don't know, body image or health at every size or kind of more of that kind of teaching side of things?
I would say that in our group classes, things are lightly touched upon, but it's also just a lot more encouragement about like, do what feels good and how about you try. That's why like none of our group classes are a follow the instructor class. It is, here's an instruction. Here's 5 different ways to do it. Try them all, figure out which one works for you and then go,
Yeah.
So, but then it's more so in the one-on-one personal training and coaching sessions that there's a lot more deeper talk about health at every size and body positivity and letting go of these toxic norms that you're used to. I think a lot of people who need more one-on-one guidance and instruction and discussions, they do the personal sessions. The group sessions are not that much. It's more movement than it is talking, but things are definitely touched upon.
Okay. And do you do the one-on-one personal training now, or you've kind of moved on from that?
Oh yeah, I do, and we have like a group of trainers. We all do.
Okay, nice. And there was, I heard you on another podcast talking about the fact that you do options instead of modifications, and I really liked this explanation for it. So, are you able to just share this?
Yeah, I find that a lot of the language around different options for exercise is, and here's a modification if you can't do that. And it puts you in this mindset that like, okay, there's one way to do a squat and I can't do it. So I have to do it in this least, like the way that's not as good. Whether that means you're not going as deep or you're not adding weight or you're doing it from a chair or you're doing a wall sit instead. Or so instead of using the language like, here's the exercise sitting on sitting on a pedestal and here are all the ways to reach it. It is more like, here are 5 or 6 different ways that you're working the exact same muscles, right? They're just different ways of doing it. And one day you might choose to do it one way. And then the next time you do that exercise, you're choosing to do it in a different way for various reasons, because your knee is feeling a little bit weird that day, or moving up and down is kind of making you dizzy or nauseous. So you don't want to be doing it in this way. So just teaching that the way you might work certain muscle groups can change day to day, week to week, depending on all sorts of different circumstances. So there's not one way to do it that sits on a pedestal and then you're just trying to do it that way. To teach people to just like take the option that works with you today and go with it. And if it's that option every single time, awesome. And if it changes every single time you do it, awesome. It doesn't matter. You're working the same muscle. Nice. So it just gives people more freedom. That's what I mean when I say, like, how do you enjoy a class? Once you start to learn these things and you're like, okay, the instructor's doing squats, but I was also taught that if I do a wall sit instead, because that's what I prefer, I'm going to work the same muscle. So I'm going to do this instead. You're choosing how you're going to move your body. And if you learn how to do that, you will enjoy exercise a lot more.
Yeah. And as you say, it's not, you're moving away from this hierarchy of like, oh, today must be a bad day because I'm having to do this modification, as opposed to just, okay, this is where I find myself. And this is the thing that really appeals to me of these 3 options. And so this is what I'm going to do today. Like while not every day is going to be a good day in terms of you feeling your absolute best, it's not creating this false sense of like today was a bad workout.
Right. And also, like, you don't have to not be able to do something to choose not to do it.
Sure.
Which I think is, so yeah, maybe you can do push-ups from your toes, but you don't like to. Yeah. You know, maybe you just prefer to do them from your knees. Maybe you just prefer to do them off of yoga blocks. It doesn't mean you have to choose something because you can't. Yeah. But give yourself the freedom to choose like which one actually just feels the best. You know, doesn't always have to be the one way. And I think people aren't taught that in fitness. It's always like you're striving for the ultimate movement, whatever that is.
Yeah. Well, I feel like if I'm comparing it to intuitive eating, it's people who are like, I want to do intuitive eating, but I want my intuition to always be telling me to eat broccoli or to always be telling myself to eat these healthy foods. And it's like, well, that's not really intuitive eating. That's you having some preset ideas about what is healthy and just wishing your body is always going to tell you to eat those foods. Right. As opposed to like truly having intuitive eating where, some days you're feeling more like broccoli, other days you're feeling more like ice cream, like whatever it may be is okay.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And so look, this has been such an awesome conversation. I really do love what you're doing with this movement, and there must be just such a market for it. Like, as you said, there are so many people who really want this. And I imagine that there wasn't much on offer when you started doing this.
No, there was nothing. When I started this, there was really nothing. And Toronto was a huge city, and I was the only person in Toronto doing this. And this is before everybody went virtual. But it's one, in a sense, it sucks, it's sad, and it's a little scary that the fitness industry has kind of caught on to this movement of health at every size, body positivity, come as you are, no judgment. But they're doing it in their advertisement. But then when you get into that space, it's not what they're advertising it to be, because they didn't take the time to figure out why this is a thing. They just saw that it's a thing and they labeled their advertisements. So it sucks because people can get hurt that way. But it's also good and it's exciting that there is a shift happening in the fitness industry and in the world in general, that people are starting to look at bodies in a different way. which is exciting. But then at the same time, it's like, but do your homework, because I don't want people to go, oh, I found a body positive gym because it said body positive on their ad. And then I went there and they did my measurement.
Yes.
So there wasn't a lot of it when I started. There is definitely more of it now, but how much of it is legit is hard to say.
Yeah. Yeah. You want it to be, as you've described it, where you are getting the real deal as opposed to just the buzzwords and the veneer of this as a way to get you to sign up to your 12-month gym contract, where it is still then just the same as it ever was.
Yeah. And like, there's like a body positive fitness company virtually, and then they have like a class called tank top arms. Like, what? Come to my body positive tank top arms class. What? No. Like, there's just so many like conflicting things out there that it infuriates me. But yeah.
Yeah. And it's hard because like that is a very obvious issue for someone like yourself or I to see, whereas someone who is new to this, they might not necessarily know that, or they're kind of straddling both worlds of like, I'm trying to do this whole move my body intuitively thing, but I'm also still wanting to lose weight. And so it just really muddies the water for them, because they think, oh, that is doing it the intuitive way.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It can be very confusing for people who don't really know where they're at with it all.
Well, look, I'm so glad that you are out here and doing this, because I love your message. I love what you're doing. What didn't I ask you, or what didn't we cover that you want to mention, if there's anything?
I think we covered all of it. I feel like that was such a great, thorough interview, and I enjoyed it a lot. I think we covered all the important stuff anyway.
Okay, cool. Well, look, the final question then is just like, where can people go if they want to find out more about you?
Yeah, we're all over the internet. Like I said, we do a lot of our work virtually. Bodypositivefitness.ca is our website. Body Positive Fitness with an underscore after it on Instagram. Body Positive Fitness on Facebook. Yeah, one of those avenues you would be able to connect yourself to pretty much everything we offer.
Okay, perfect. And are all the classes live, or there's replays?
All of our classes are live. A lot. We do have a pretty robust virtual schedule, and you can also download it you can download a PDF in your time zone to see what it looks like at a glance in your time zone. A lot of virtual companies have moved towards the pre-recorded stuff, but like I had mentioned, our classes are so personalized. They are not a follow the instructor class. So it doesn't really work for it to be recorded and then sent out, because it really is tailored to the people that are there and their conversation, and we're helping people. So it's not watch me and follow what I'm doing. So pre-recorded is not our jam right now anyway. That would have to be a whole separate project if we did get onto that. So yeah, all of them are live, but there's so many classes that we hope that most people can find some that work in their time zone.
Okay, perfect. Well, yeah, I will put a link to all of that in the show notes. And yeah, thank you so much for coming on. This has been awesome.
Thank you so much for having me.
So that was my conversation with Jenna. I'm so glad that she's doing what she's doing, and that there are places like Body Positive Fitness. If you want to check it out for yourself, you can save 50% when you get the flexible 5-class pass. You can go to bodypositivefitness.ca/promo, and then at the checkout, use the promo code REAL45. As I mentioned at the top, I'm currently taking on new clients and have 5 spots available. You can find out more by heading to 7-health.com/help. And again, I will put a link to that in the show notes. I'll be back next week with another episode, and I'll catch you then.